Yes, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to new episode on probably this year it's the last one for 2023 as this year passed by so quickly of our tech recruiting talk, a format within our tech recruiting academy. Thanks for joining us today. In our last session that was hosted by my dear colleague Anna, they were talking together with the amazing Ala Pavlova about sourcing via Slack and Discord, and today we are talking HR trends in 2024. And I'm really thrilled to have Thomas Kohler as my guest today. Thomas, happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us and thanks for spending your time and sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. And I had the honor to be his guest in his podcast a couple of months ago. And there we were talking about the results of our dev survey that we do every year. And it was an amazing session. I really enjoyed that. And I'm really happy to give it back to you now to have you as my guest. So welcome, Thomas.
Thanks, Rudy. It was really fun having you on the show and also seeing you on events kind of every month. So it's cool to do this together.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know Thomas, I mean, he started his HR career in recruiting for Viennese B2B fintechs, and he really helped companies to really scale up quickly from 50 to more than 3,000 employees across Europe. And then he did a clever thing. He founded PeopleWise, his own company, and this company is really helping other companies to scale up, to find the people, and to get the kind of expertise in recruiting, consulting, and HR. And that's really nice. Before we start, important message to you out there. We have a kind of a LinkedIn channel. So please use the LinkedIn comments to drop your questions, to drop your comments, to raise topics that are interesting for you. I mean, we want to have it as interactive as possible. So I have prepared some questions. Thomas, we are talking about HR trends today, what will come up in 2024, as we are very, very close to the new year. And I think there's a lot of things going on, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of new technologies. And I'm really thrilled to talk about that and to get also the Thomas ideas and thoughts about that. That's one thing. But as important as we have questions for Thomas and I've prepared some questions, I would really be interested in getting a kind of your questions and to talk about that as well. We have no time limit. I mean, we should probably end up in an hour, but if it takes 35 minutes, it takes 35 minutes. If it takes 45 minutes, it takes 45 minutes. And if we need 1 hour, we need 1 hour. So I mean, we're really flexible in the time. And so let's get started. If we are talking about what's going on in 2024, there's a hell of a lot of buzzwords. I joined the HR community and the HR business 10, 15 years ago, and I was really overwhelmed by so many buzzwords in this kind of environment. There was, at this time, it was Working 4.0, I think that was one of it. And it was, of course, War for Talents, which is here for 20 years now, probably. If you look on what's coming up, Thomas, what do you think are the 3 to 5 biggest trends and challenges for companies and HR departments for 2024? What do you see?
Yeah. Thank you, first of all. So maybe first let's give some context before answering the questions, because I think it's then easier to understand where it's coming from. So first of all, I think the cost of capital is uncertain, still. But I think in 2024, this will change so that interest rates not go up or maybe stay flat or even go down in certain regions like in the EU or in the US. And this will be a big driver for investment decisions again. So until this is happening, nobody knows. It will be uncertain. Yeah, we also see this now in headcount planning rallies of small to big companies or also venture capital activities overall. And also the public market is quite volatile, and also we did not really see a lot of IPOs in the past year or two, because of all the uncertainties. And of course, there are the war situations and everything else, what is contributing towards uncertainty. But I think in 2024, there will be a lot of clarity on several of these attributes. So therefore, I think one major trend is talent pooling, because you might need to be ready to start ramping up teams quickly when the certainty is there again. And of course, there are a lot of things to do in each businesses, and also therefore resources are needed. But currently, not so many things are done in parallel as before when capital is not uncertain. Yeah, or the cost of capital is not uncertain. Second, I think also what is a big point is the whole data-driven and insight-driven part of recruiting, or how to make decisions. It was always a thing, but I think now companies really see the impact of not having a data-driven recruiting, HR, or decision-making framework in place, that you cannot even navigate through certain adjustments, so you're not on top of mind and not under control. And if that's not the case, you should really invest in your data infrastructure, in making sure that you get data, get insights, and can make decisions out of that. Another aspect is, I think, the AI assisted or AI enabled way of working. For instance, in recruitment, there are two things how I would leverage AI. One is in getting an assistant for each hiring manager or recruiter through a tool like MetaView, or another AI note taker that is summarizing calls and then writing scorecards for you. Of course, the decision making and the judgment still needs to go with the manager or the recruiters. But the whole information gathering and just putting things down should be leveraged through AI, in my opinion. Secondly, there is also a way where you can leverage sourcing and sourcing activities through AI. I'm still not so familiar with certain tests on MetaView and documentation. I did a lot of tests, and I think it's really worth it for sourcing enabled AI assistance. This is something what I'm also still testing, and I also think for certain functions, for a certain volume and a certain level of the same activity over and over again, this will be a leverage. For one-off searches, not. Then another trend will be having a flexible recruitment team, because you don't want to maybe invest into big recruitment teams again and having fixed costs under uncertainty. And maybe you also don't want to spend high fees on one-off searches. So an in-between solution to go with freelancers, to go with temporary staff, or also with companies like PeopleWise is also something what is possible and what a lot of companies are leveraging at the moment. And I think this will also continue to increase. And then fifth, of course, the whole candidate and employee experience piece, because the market is maybe not so high in demand of new positions and jobs, right? So maybe companies or employees and candidates now even make decisions when not everything is perfect and they live with the constraints. Once this changes, you have a problem of attrition, or of not getting candidates closed, because more opportunities will be there, and therefore it's important to also invest into the whole employee experience, candidate experience. But I think that's also something what is not a new trend. It's just something to emphasize again and not forget about.
Thanks, Thomas. Let's start with the first one. I think the first one you mentioned was talent pooling, and I see it like this as well, because I think you probably don't have the right timing ready and being able to do it like we did it for many years. But how do you handle it? For example, what is the best idea to set it up? Because I mean, talent pooling means two things for me. It means that this classical way of how we did it in the past tense, we have a need for some stuff, then we place a job ad somewhere, and then the duration of it is 60 days or 30 days, and then we have got a kind of staple of applications, and then we have a kind of a really limited time frame, because I mean, from setting it up to probably hiring the guys, probably the duration was 3 months, just to take something as an example, and everything was closed. If you're pooling talents, that also means that talents have got expectations, because I mean, if you're looking for them, if you're addressing them, if you're creating their curiosity, they are awaiting an answer. How do you handle that if you build up a pool of talents by not giving them a concrete answer, because you don't even know yourself when it's the right time that they can start working for you or with you?
Yes, a good question. So I think one aspect is having at least maybe not a plan, a headcount plan or a hiring plan in place, but something more vague. And that means for me certain hypotheses
Mhm.
that then can be translated into maybe in H1 or H2, we might need to hire into this field of expertise, or we need
Mhm.
to have this number of capacity,
Mhm.
this number of competencies, or this cultural attitude experience shift. Yeah, it can be a factor of attributes where you should have hypotheses around
Mhm.
for a certain period of time in the future.
Mhm.
And based on that, you define a certain company phase, company stage you move into,
Mhm.
and that's an overall storyline. Yeah. For instance, we will need to build out a new, I don't know, um, AI segment for our tool because we will have data ready that we can um, take advantage of. So we will need to have researchers in that field or engineers in that field with that one specific skill to process natural language models from
Mhm.
our own data,
Mhm.
right? That could be a use case and that could be something we need in the future, but you cannot put a budget around it and you can also not put a headcount number around it. So what do? You take a proportion of time from maybe the recruiters or the managers by themselves. So someone with ownership and
Mhm.
someone with this level of abstraction in thinking for the future and saying, okay, now I go out, I do a bit of research, I scan the market and try to understand companies that maybe built already or building already what we might need to build in the future. And I
Mhm.
try to get coffee chats, I try to get lunches, I try to maybe host a short dinner where I invite even 5 to 6 people for them. I
Mhm.
invite my manager who is in lead and I
Mhm.
just make sure that it's organized and then we have a chat. And then it's also good for information gathering. You stay in contact and then maybe you do individual follow-ups and that's good enough. And maybe every 3 6 months you just do another call and say, hey, that's an
Mhm.
update from our side, or maybe every 6 weeks. Yeah, it depends
Mhm.
on what's the time
Yeah, of
period.
course, of course.
um, and then you can already set the expectations and say, to be honest, I don't have anything for now, but this is what we need to build, this is
Mhm.
the overall storyline, that would be the circumstances in case that decisions triggers, would you be up for it and what would you need to make the
Mhm.
decision, and
Mhm.
then you have a pool.
Yeah, that's good. But that also means that companies need to change their way of looking for the talents, because honestly, that means that you have to be there where they are, or where they like to be. Because I mean, you have to meet them where they normally move around. So it's not this kind of traditional way of how we recruited people in the in the past tense. It's more becoming a kind of probably going where they are, where they love to be. Directly need to know and understand what they normally like to do, except looking for jobs on some platforms. Yeah.
Definitely. That's a
Yeah.
very good point. And I think Rudy also leveraging a platform like yours is great because this is actually what you do on a weekly or even daily basis, right? You leverage communities, you leverage networks, you organize something, you bring people together around a certain topic. So if you're hiring engineers and you're not involved in your communities, I think it's something, it's a missed opportunity, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you have no concrete timing because, as you said, I mean, you don't even know is the right entrance point. Is it April or March, or is it May, or could it already be February? And therefore, you need to be there, and they have to know you when you are ready, because then I think you have the chance to get in contact and stay in contact with them, and then you need to build up a relation. I think it's more the relation building than hiring people. Then you're building a
Yes.
relation first, and you hire them in a second step, not the other way around. Because at the moment it was like getting in contact, hiring people, and then build up a relation. And I think now it turns probably into the opposite. It's building up the relation first, yeah, and
Yes.
then hiring the people. So I think
And to
that's
be
it.
honest, there is also a good book with the title "Never Eat Alone." Yeah, everybody has to eat,
Yeah,
so why not using your lunch breakers to have to talk
yeah,
to people
yeah, of course.
that are maybe not just comfortable and I already know them and yeah, let's chit chat
Yeah.
versus maybe once a week just
Mm,
go for lunch, or every second week go for one lunch with
mm,
somebody where a certain hypothesis is behind the lunch
Mhm.
to gather information or build a relationship?
That's a really good one. Uh, let's step to the next one. The next one was, and I mean that's here for years as well. And I think it has now with ChatGPT and with AI being so broad and so present in all the discussions. I mean, there's not even a single uh, exhibition, a single conference, and a single kind of probably even if you switch on the TV, there's not even a single spot in TV where the people don't talk about AI. uh, what I always have this kind of feeling is there's two kind of groups of people. There are the guys, they are really voting for technology solving the issue, and there's the other group of people, they are standing up for humanity will solve the issue. So we are, as many topics are really related to people, and I think at the end of the day we're talking about well-being of people, we're talking about job is lifetime, we're talking about all this kind of issues. What kind of party are you more in? So are you more the guy who believes that technology can solve it, or where do you see the balance, or how could companies find the balance? Because if you try to solve it technically, or if you try to solve it on there from the humanities point of view, where do you think the right balance is located?
A very good question, Rudi. I think that tech should always be a very well used enabler, and humans need to be in the main driving seat. And to be honest, the whole technicalities in AI and with the whole buzzwords, I think this will be a movement where adaptation can happen quickly, but it will be difficult to adapt. So, just technically spoken, I think
Yeah,
um, the trend is there because technically there are not so many big bottlenecks
yeah.
anymore. Of course, there's still a lot to improve, but it's also learning very, very fast. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, so I think over time, technology will develop faster than the human adaptation and the human behavior. And we all know how hard it is to change habits, even
mm,
for the good. Yeah.
yeah,
Quit
yeah.
smoking. Maybe not easy. Yeah. But maybe most of the people know logically it might make sense. Yeah. So I think I see this same with AI. So there will be a lot of things where you can drive projects, problems, tech enabled. Yeah. For instance, also in hiring, yeah, where you don't need to screen the same CVs all the time and get frustrated about somebody is not missing, is not getting it, or setting not the right expectations, maybe in a call. I think, of course, this at some point maybe can be all handled by AI.
Mhm,
Um, I don't think that it will happen. Why? Because at the end, it's also all about the human interaction, and it should be more looked at how can we maximize the human enablement for technology. For instance, a good example in an interview, not typing all the time,
mhm,
and taking notes,
mhm,
letting an AI assistant transcribe the interview, and afterwards you can already structure your summary in a way you wanted to have it structured for the right briefing for the right hiring manager, and also
mhm,
sending a summary to the candidates that they know, this is how they summarize the call, and this is what I said. And maybe
mhm.
I can even say, hey, actually, this was a misunderstanding because I meant it in another way. Could you just modify it? Not that we are running into wrong expectations, for instance, right? This is how it should be used.
Mhm. I read a study, and it was quite. I mean, I was not surprised by the figure because I expected in this range, probably a little bit higher. But they were talking about employee experience and employee engagement, and the study said that companies that work on employee engagement will grow their revenues up to 2.5 times, sorry, uh, more than their competitors, because this passion of the people and this engagement of the people, of course, helps them to accelerate the business. I recognize that in my personal career 3 to 4 times in the meantime, because I was able with the same kind of people to to level up the revenues by a factor 3, 4, 5, even with the same kind of people, with the same market conditions, and with the same kind of competition on the market. And when I analyzed the situation, at the end of the day, it always came out that it has to do with employee engagement, it has to do with passion, and it has to do with I always call it lighting the fire of the people. So how could AI help us to find out who fits to us in that way?
Yeah.
Or is it
I
still
think,
will it still be a kind of a human thing? So could be an answer as well.
of course, that's a human thing, but I think it can definitely help. So I can already see from my recruiters, and we are also quite, I would say, passionate as a team, and people really want to move forward. They want to get going. They want to, they are engaged. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I always hear, um, I would say, when there is something that is a bottleneck, it's usually something annoying. Yeah. Like technically no access or unnecessary admin and so on. And I think this can be made more seeming less
Mhm.
in terms of experience on how you administrate stuff, how you run processes, that the whole, I would say, interaction, the whole user experience on how to interact with devices. It's not just text to text or image to image or voice to voice, right? It's way more holistic. And I
Mhm.
think this whole change of how we can interact with machines or with software or with computer, this will be way more user friendly and therefore also way more enabling
Mhm.
employees to do things that are maybe more engaging
Mhm.
and less discouraging, like admin stuff that doesn't make sense because the IT setup is not correct. For instance, reporting. Yeah, of course you need to report, and of course sometimes it's important to add information to something by default.
Mhm.
But I think this is where AI should be leveraged most. That
Mhm.
this overhead is reduced, and then of
Mhm.
course maybe we can also have the same output with 4-day work week, and then it's not something. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. Definitely true. So, uh, a topic which I really find important, and it's in all the trends. I was doing some research on kind of international studies talking about what are the HR trends in 2024, and I mean I found some of them, and uh, one topic which was common in all three of them, that we have to move into more and more culture driven recruiting. What's your thoughts on culture driven recruiting from your side?
Oh, I
Because
I loved that one.
uh, you love that one. That's the answer.
Um, no, so let's say when we just look into an attribute on how to evaluate or run a process from an employer side, it's always you look at the non-functional, the functional competencies, or then maybe something behavioral, and then also some hard facts that organizationally everything makes
Mm,
sense. Yeah, and what I always do is I flip that, and
mm,
I try to drive it. Expectation driven. So I always focus on the scoping of roles and of visions, of missions, of departments and goals.
mhm,
That's a bit more even strategy consulting work than recruitment work, where you
mhm,
try to um, display and structure information in a way that everything is MISI, so mutually collective, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, that you really
mhm,
have a logic tree in the information you display. And based on that, you can very well define the scope and expectations of the role, the environment, and what's actually needed, and maybe also what are the constraints. Yeah.
mhm,
And
mhm,
based on that story, you get certain expectations from the candidate or employee side,
mhm,
and really openly and transparently give them expectations on what they find in terms of environment,
mhm,
but also to understand how they react towards what they look for, and be very transparent and radically open
mhm,
about it, instead of then hiding something or maybe not even taking the time to think about something and say, yeah, we will figure it out later. I think that's just laziness. Yeah.
mhm,
And even if you cannot, because of some dependencies, make a hypothesis and mention that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think this is something what is super important overall. And therefore, I think it's way easier also to drive a more, I would say, cultural or behavioral approach into hiring, where also the whole non-functional questions, ex- expectations are not so necessary, because you
Mhm.
talk about outcomes, you talk about behaviors, how to get there, and about the environment. And I think that's way more powerful to
Mhm.
also get engagement
Mhm.
upfront before entering the process or when entering the process. And secondly, you even also get just the candidates that really want it and are up for it in the right in the for the challenge in the right way. And you
Mhm.
don't even talk to people or let people into the process where it does not fit. So the conversion rates later on increase
Mhm.
through that approach.
Mhm. But that for me sounds a little bit like uh, storytelling is becoming really important. So it's not placing a job ad somewhere; it's more telling a story, telling about yourself, and that's probably tied to two further trends that I found in these kind of studies that I was looking for and searching for. There was two things in it, and it fits to it. There was one what really was really called recruiting as a sales activity. I like this headline because that has to do with pitching it, with telling a story, using storytelling approaches like that we use in sales and marketing since years or decades. How do you see that? And the second one is probably we could also add to that already is using video more as a kind of the medium because it's much easier to probably grab to do storytelling in a short video than doing it in a job ad.
Yes, good point. I think I agree on both sides. It's just important to put it into the right context. So, hiring is a sales activity. Yes, definitely. And the question is what attributes. So, one attribute would be what's the ideal customer profile and what's the ideal candidate profile, depending on what product you sell or
Mm,
what job you sell.
mm,
And therefore, also I think there are a lot of, especially early stage companies out there where they don't even have a clear defined ICP in sales, and then they
mm,
fail in outbound or in sales overall.
mm,
And then it's all about the founders, and they somehow get it done, but it's not really systematic. Same with hiring. Yeah. Um, if you don't define the scope of a role or the outcome and the overall, I would say, contribution towards a greater vision, plan, mission, whatever strategy is, then nobody, then maybe the founders can really convince the right people, because you don't have the right information and you cannot systematically set it up. Um, so that's, I think, a parallel. And of course, in sales, if you're really good, especially for enterprise sales, you ask the right questions, yeah, and you also
mm,
give the right information. And I think it's the same with hiring. So you need to be able to ask the right questions, and therefore you need a certain level of clarity in thinking. Um,
mm.
yeah, and then the second piece, what was that again? First sales and second
A
video. Yeah.
video as a kind of as it was mentioned as a trend that video recruiting in which sense ever will be probably one of the topics on the agenda for
Yeah, I
2024.
think overall we saw it anyway through post-COVID, that everything turned from a meeting room or an on-site visit into a video or call. So I think this is already a trend. But maybe what is also meant is a bit the asynchronous videos, right?
Mm,
And I
yeah.
see that especially through volume.
Mm,
Because if there is a very clear defined role and you need a big volume, for instance, ramping up the sales function, and you need to hire 100 sellers across the globe or in a certain region, um, you might also want to take people from another job switching into sales, for instance, an entry level position or whatever, right? For that a level where you cannot read from the previous experience if it's the right fit or not. I think for that, using video and just getting an impression of what's their why, what's their inner drive, why do
mm,
they really want to work with us?
mm,
If it's a company or position driven
mm,
market in terms of recruitment,
mm,
um, it's very good. But also on the candidate side, if you really want a certain job, why not going the extra mile and sending a LinkedIn voice message, a LinkedIn video or whatever, and saying, hey,
Mhm.
that's me. I want to talk to you. And I don't want to just go through the regular process. But by the way, I
Mhm.
also did it. Here's more context.
Mhm. Yeah, and we personally use it on our platform quite intensively. So we really motivate companies. So if we do it the other way around as well, we really motivate companies to present themselves, but not in a way to put up a kind of a glimmery, shiny image video, but more to take their developers, for example, to really give them a voice, to really talk about tech stack, about the projects they're working on, about the issues they are solving, about the purpose and all this kind of stuff. And this really helps also attracting talents, even if you don't have the big brand. Yeah, because I mean,
Definitely.
yeah.
No, no, definitely. And I think that's also something what I really see as a big trend overall in employer branding. Because, for instance, I also launched a podcast this year, and we did around up year to date, I think up to 49 or 50 episodes now. And
Mhm.
it already has more than 500,000 reach on LinkedIn just through
Mm.
posting video snippets.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean it's user generated content in a way, so it's really generated by the people that work in your team, and so I think they're more trustful than an image video which was made by an agency. I have, as we already have reached more of half of our time that we have in this slot, I would really ask the audience out there, if you have questions, please don't be shy. So drop them in the comments that we can go through them as well. As I've got 3 or 4 topics left, which I would really be interested to talk with you about and hear your opinion on it. One thing, and it came also out of our study when we did a big survey in 2023, and we were talking in the podcast already about it. But what we see as a big upcoming trend, and it probably has to do, or it's probably directly connected to this kind of home office and remote work thing, is a kind of an issue which is coming up heavily, and it's called e-presentism. For guys out there that haven't heard about it, it means that a lot of employees really think if they're working from their home office or if they're working remote, that they have to be online much more than they would be present in the office, because of having the fear that their managers think they are sitting lazy at home watching Netflix. So this kind of effect leads probably in a negative way to some mental health issues, and to probably to some uh, kind of stress and health thingies. And therefore, what do you think about well-being? What will well-being be in 2024? Will it be a topic that companies have to think about?
Yeah, I think that's also an overall culturally thing, right? On how to approach this, and it really depends on the manager, to be honest. So I think the overall company could maybe say, no, we don't want that, and we don't want expect you to respond at 11 in the evening, even if you receive a message there. I think that's also something really what managers or leaders need to be accountable or responsible for,
Mm,
to create a safe environment there. And I can relate that this might be a problem for a lot of people, because especially people taking ownership
mm,
and having a lot of accountability and want to move forward in their career. It's maybe an unwritten rule that you need to do that because you think you need to do that, right?
mm,
Um, so I think having a certain level of balance and reflection overall in life, to understand when to switch on and off, this really helps. But it's also always not possible, and maybe not always the right thing to do, because sometimes maybe for a certain period of time you really just double down and get going, and then get, I don't know, 3x, 10x out instead of doing the regular thing. Yeah, why not? But I think it should not be something ongoing.
mm. We've got one question now from a LinkedIn user, but it's a really nice one, and I would really keep that, if it's okay for you out there, dear user and dear guest. If it's okay for you, I would keep that as a closing question, because it's a really nice one. Yeah, so we can both answer it. Probably you get 2 answers then in one, because I have my thoughts there, and Thomas definitely has got his thoughts on the question as well. So if that's okay, what I really want to also, because we always struggle with it, that we are developers, we really have the discussion heavily with clients. if it comes to, I mean, we all have learned with Corona, we all have learned that geographic location probably isn't the big issue that we always thought it is. And how internationally open do you think we need to be to really be able to get this kind of problem with war for talents and with labor shortage solved? Do we need to be more open for international recruiting?
Yes, definitely. So I think the pure numbers show it, that there are not enough skilled workers for the demand we have. Yeah, and also for the whole blue collar workforce, this will be a critical problem, and especially with the dynamics of businesses. Right now, big trends are investing into solar power, and therefore you need to have a lot of people, for instance, just installing the solar panels, and this will be a period where will go crazy, and once on every rooftop there is a solar panel, maybe the need will not be that high and crazy anymore, but for that period where everything is boosting, you need more people in certain markets, right? And therefore you need to have the factor time that is limited, and once that factor time is limited, you need to then not limit yourself in terms of region. If you have enough time,
Yeah.
maybe you don't need to do that, right? So I think that's also, that's always something to consider, and it will be always a topic at certain industries under certain periods.
Mm-hmm. We got a comment or a question from Pratap. I think it's going into the direction that also my experience shows quite often. We have the experience that we are really discussing, and it's of course it's mainly Germany and Austria and probably Switzerland as markets where German always is this kind of a need. And even if we're talking with developers and developers think they live English, they think English, they talk English, probably all the movies they watch on Netflix and other channels are consumed in English as well. And the companies still force them to learn German or to have German skills. I personally don't really understand it because honestly, it is kind of a little bit a black and white view. So I mean, so it's a kind of a KO criteria. If you don't speak German, we don't hire these guys. And I always explain it to the companies like this to say, okay, I mean, developers are really used to learn languages because every program languages is a language as well in a way, yeah. And they're used to learn new languages from time to time, and I think they are not trying to avoid this. So I always motivate our clients to take these guys and then probably help them in learning English quite fast by paying for a German language course, and then normally that's a solution. But we still have this quite often as KO criteria. I don't know, brother, if that was what you meant, but I can't understand it as well because it honestly doesn't really make sense, because I mean it's this kind of black and white view which I don't see and I don't like, because leaving cool talents because of having one small skill which they probably can learn quite easily because they normally are used to learn languages, and the programming language is probably nothing else than a language we speak. So I don't understand it. I don't know if it was an answer on that, but yeah, probably Thomas has an kind of an input there as well. Don't know.
Yeah, so I think that also really depends on the company type. So I think the classical German Mittelstand is maybe overall a bit more towards German because they're maybe coming from that period and everything goes a bit slower than maybe a company that just got founded, and where you found a company intentionally with going global, international, or just multi-market instead of just Germany, for instance. And even if you're a product or a company that is just operating within Germany, why not leveraging the accessibility of having international talent able to onboard and hire, because it gives so many opportunities. And I understand that for a lot of companies, this is tough because they're coming from a certain angle, and then maybe they are struggling with change management, getting ready, or just getting future ready. And I think
Mhm.
every company that should be future ready should be able to have a software engineering product development team operating internationally, because why making this so limited? Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's more something where companies just are not able to do so. um, yeah, and from a cultural perspective, they're maybe not used to changes. So I think that's something what often is the case. And sometimes there are founders, leaders that just are maybe a bit control heavy,
Mhm.
micromanaging, and
Mhm.
if they are maybe not really good in a language, or a certain key employees are maybe more comfortable in explaining and giving context in German because they always did so, and they could never imagine that this piece of nuance could be delivered in English. Okay,
Mhm.
if you always think like that, then you will never learn. So I
Mhm.
think being open in that sense makes sense. And of course, I understand that this transition is hard.
Mhm. I've two topics left, which I would like to get your opinion and your thoughts on. One is, and I mean, it was mentioned as a trend in one of the papers that I found, and it was called tailoring recruitment to the younger generation. So it's more or less how to address Generation Z. But I would like to extend the question a little bit, or the topic a little bit. Uh, I also want to get your opinion on how should we extend our kind of thinking and our mindset also into the direction of getting older employees. So because I'm in the age now, if I send out some kind of applications, I normally tend to get a lot of no's because I'm already 57. So but I think there's a lot of expertise in that target audience and target group. And the other thing which I also want to open up is this kind of, we are really still used to read CVs and get our knowledge out of CVs. And I also want to get your opinion on hidden talents, because especially if we're talking about software developers, all the software developers, the really good ones that I know personally, and I mean it's a couple of hundreds, yeah, they all were kind of not the best in school. They didn't do this classical kind of studying at the university, so they were more or less this kind of, I always call them hidden talents, yeah, because nobody is really wanting them, having them in a recruitment room or in a kind of an interview. But these guys are really then passionate enough to really go through it. Yeah. What's your opinion on these three topics? So, Generation Z, the golden ages, probably, let's call them like this, or yeah, and hidden talents.
Yes. So then I would need to answer the final questions. If you had to have only one skill to develop in your recruitment function 24, which one would it be? Is that then
Yeah,
allowed?
yeah, it's okay, of course, of course. If it fits to the question, please. Yeah, of course.
It fits. Critical thinking. Yeah. So I would train recruiters or hiring managers or companies or people overall in critical thinking. Why? Because as you said, Rudy, sometimes there's so many stereotypes that are really limiting. Yeah.
Mm,
And if you have somebody that is able to ask the right questions and then structure and judge information in a way that drives decisions, or that
mm,
drives decision making power, that triggers decisions, because the way how the informations are gathered and structured really makes sense, that there is no logical reason to say no. This
mm,
is powerful, and this
mm,
is what recruiters should be able to do, but this is also what managers should be able to do. And a lot of people just don't have it because it's tough, yeah, and it's not obvious. It needs to be trained like a muscle.
mhm,
And there are a lot of books out there, there are a lot of training programs out there, there are a lot of methodologies out there on how to get certain frameworks and levels on critical thinking. But I think if you're able to do that, you are able to adjust to any problem, you are able to adjust to any environment and situation, and you can build a case why it makes sense to hire this dropout or to hire this silver ager. Yeah, there are this is a level of power you gather if you have this ability.
mm,
um, and I think it's really hard to answer all these questions on how to hire Gen Z and how to hire silver agers or hidden talent um, in general, but this would be my most effective general answer, that you
mhm,
are able to drill down in the information under the certain circumstances and come up with the most effective solutions based on your information gathering and structuring of thinking. It's maybe abstract, but I think that's something what is very powerful.
Thanks for that. And I've two other things which I found in every single report and study, and I think it's everywhere. Probably it's just a kind of a buzzword, but probably makes sense as well. I haven't found an answer on that, but I want to get your opinion on it as well. And that's my last question that I have. What I really found as kind of topics is virtual and augmented reality and gamification. These two things are present in all this kind of information that I found and all the kind of paperwork that I found and all the studies that I was going through, that this could be a kind of a problem solver using this kind of technology and the gamification as a kind of to get it more emotional. What's your thoughts on that?
You mean now for winning talents or overall
Yes.
in the economy?
I mean, probably willing talents, probably for onboarding. So I think gamification, virtual and augmented reality is meant for onboarding processes as well. It's meant for training within the onboarding phase. So I think there's a lot of examples out there, and gamification as well. So gamification could also be a kind of an onboarding tool, and probably it's meant into that. I personally haven't met it too often in reality, but I found it in all the studies and all the paper that I researched, and I was asking ChatGPT as well about the trends for next year. And
what did it say?
Beside the answer that I'm just feeding with old data, but probably this could be a trend. even there I found gamification there, so I got gamification as a kind of an answer.
Yeah, I think gamification can be rewarding but also dangerous, because if you get competition or competitiveness out of it, I mean, unless you want it, I think maybe it's something to be careful about. That then the most competitive people put their elbows out and get in your face and say, I'm better than you. And also you get that feeling. I think that's something to be careful of. If it's something that is maybe rewarding in terms of driving interaction and driving engagement, I think it's very powerful and should be used. And with the whole augmented reality piece, I think for jobs that maybe are manual work related, simulating something, super powerful. For engineering, I have too less imagination on how it could be used, to be honest.
Okay.
Software engineering.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's no further questions from the audience, I mean, I'm through with my questions, and just owe you the LinkedIn user. So it's anonymous, so I always call you LinkedIn user. Sorry for that, but there's no name there. So my answer on, if you just had to invest in only one skill to develop and improve your recruiters in 2024, which one would it be and why? So from my point of view, it would definitely be the ability to become more a kind of a marketing and sales, or get a marketing and sales approach instead of a purchasing approach, because in history, recruiting was a kind of a purchasing department, and I do not mean that negatively, so don't take it negative, but it was this kind of approach. The companies was expecting from this department to purchase this human resource on the market as quick and as cheap as possible. And I think that was for many, many years valid, and it worked for many, many years. So it was a kind of a purchasing approach, and it definitely has to switch into a marketing and a kind of a sales approach. And this means understanding target audiences, getting a clear picture where to find them. And I think it's also moving people from a kind of a more reactive mode. If somebody quits the job, you have to find another one, into a kind of a strategic, forward-looking approach. And I think that is probably the skill that I would train my people. But it's not only connected to HR. So it's probably a kind of a cultural change also in the managers' heads in the organization as well. Okie doke. So I think we're through. Thomas, it was a pleasure having you in the show. And hopefully we have a common session together next year somewhere. And anyhow, we will meet on some stages and some of our stages and events. So thank you for being with us. I wish you and your family and friends all Merry Christmas and all the best for 2024, because we are so close to the end of the year. To all the people out there, thank you very much for joining us. And the same to you. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a lot of health, and a successful and joyful 2024. We will be back in January with the next session from us. So please stay tuned. And a very special thanks to Nico and Adnan, the two nice guys in my background here, for helping me to run the show. So they do a wonderful job, and thank you for that throughout the year. They're helping me to find the guests. They're helping me to set it up technically. So it's great to work with you guys. So goodbye, and hope to see you all soon. And Merry Christmas from the whole WeAreDevelopers team. Goodbye.
Thank you as well. Bye bye.